All right, today we are going to talk about finding missing sides of special right triangles. Okay, so our success criteria is going to be something like this, where you're only given one of the three sides and you should be able to find the other two. So far, we've always used Pythagorean theorem to find missing sides of right triangles, but there are two cases where we don't actually have to use Pythagorean theorem and we can take some shortcuts instead. Okay. Special case number one looks like this. In a 30, 60, 90 right triangle, so what that means is they have a 30-degree angle, a 60-degree angle, and a 90-degree angle. If the shorter leg has length x, then the longer leg has length x root 3, and the hypotenuse has length 2x, which is going to look something like this. So the shorter leg has length x, the longer leg has length x times the square root of 3, and the hypotenuse, remember the hypotenuse is the longest of the three sides, has length 2 times x. Okay, so remember to get from the shorter side to the longer leg, we want to multiply by the square root of 3. Okay, so I'm going to take my shorter side and I'm going to multiply that by the square root of 3, and that's going to get me my missing side of this triangle. Now we're only given one of our sides. So our hypotenuse is 12. And remember, our hypotenuse is twice as big as our shorter side. So to get from our hypotenuse to our shorter side, I'm going to divide it by 2. Okay, so my shorter side is 6. And then again, just like we did on the previous slide, to get from the short leg to the long leg, I'm multiplying by the square root of 3. So my long leg is 6 times the square root of 3. I would like you to pause the video and try this one on your own. Okay, now we're back. So we have our shorter side of our triangle. To get from the shorter side to the longer side, remember we've done that one twice now, we multiply by the square root of 3. So for our longer leg, we get 8 times the square root of 3. To get from our short side to our hypotenuse is twice as long, so we're going to multiply by 2, and we get that our hypotenuse is 16. This one looks scary, but it's really not too bad. So we are given the longer leg of our triangle. Remember, to get from our shorter leg to our longer leg, we multiply by the square root of 3, which means to get from our longer leg to our shorter leg, this time we're going to divide by the square root of 3. Okay? So here I have 5 square root of 3 divided by the square root of 3. Those ones are going to cancel out, and we're just left with 5 for our short side of our triangle, for our shorter leg. And then to get from our short leg to our hypotenuse, we multiply by 2, and we get 10. Special case number 2 is an isosceles right triangle. Remember, isosceles means that two sides are the same and the base angles are the same. Okay. Um, and in an isosceles right triangle, those base angles are 45 degrees. Okay, our base angles are 45 degrees. Okay, so in that isosceles right triangle, if the legs have length x, then the hypotenuse has length x times the square root of 2. So here are my legs, x and x, and the hypotenuse, the longer side, the one across from the right angle, has length x times the square root of 2. Okay. So find the missing sides of the side lengths of this triangle. This is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Okay, our 45, 45, 90 triangle. To get, remember our two legs, it's isosceles, so our two legs are going to be the same. So if one of them's 27, the other one's also 27. And then to get from your leg to your hypotenuse, we multiply by the square root of 2. So you get 27 times the square root of 2. Take a minute, pause the video, and try this one on your own. Now we're going from the hypotenuse to the two legs. Okay, so to get from the hypotenuse to the two legs, remember from the leg to the hypotenuse, we multiply by the square root of 2. So from the hypotenuse to the legs, we're going to divide by the square root of 2. Okay, so you have 6 root 2 over root 2. Those root 2's cancel out and you're just left with 6. And both legs are the same. Okay, so you're left with a 6 and a 6 for your two legs. Okay. Here is one of our trickier problems. Okay, because right now we have the square root of 3 on the hypotenuse of our 30, 60, 90 triangle. So notice how we're back to our 30, 60, 90 triangle. Remember our rules, our shorter leg is x, our longer leg is x times the square root of 3, and our hypotenuse is 2 times x. Okay, so to get from our hypotenuse to the shorter side of the triangle, we need to divide by 2. So I have 10 times the square root of 3 divided by 2. So 10 divided by 2 is 5 times the square root of 3. That's the short leg of my triangle. Okay. And then to get from the short leg to the long leg, we multiply by the square root of 3. Okay. So now I have 5 times the square root of 3, which is my short leg, times the square root of 3. Remember, when we did this, the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 gets rid of the square roots completely, and you're just left with 3. Square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is just 3. And 5 times 3 is 15. So that is your long leg of the triangle. Another tricky problem from here. Um, we want to get from the shorter side to our triangle, or our two, sorry, this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle, so our two legs are the same. So if that one's square root of 6, this one's also square root of 6. And then remember, to get from the leg to the hypotenuse, we need to multiply by the square root of 2. So I have square root of 6 times the square root of 2. Remember, you can multiply everything underneath that square root, and you get the square root of 8. Be careful here though, the square root of, sorry, let me rewind, not the square root of 8, 6 times 2 is 12. There we go. The square root of 12 can be simplified. Okay, so be careful, this isn't the end. Remember, the square root of 12 can be simplified. So we have to think of our two numbers, so the square root of 12, think of our perfect square that goes into the square root of 12, that goes into 12. Okay, so you should have gotten the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. The square root of 4 is 2, so our answer is 2 times the square root of 3 for the hypotenuse of that triangle. I'd like you to pause the video and try the success criteria. Take a minute and do so. Okay, now that we're back, I would like you to go from the shorter leg. We'll go from the shorter leg to the longer leg first. Remember, to go from the shorter leg to the longer leg, we multiply by the square root of 3. So here I have the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, which remember we just did a couple of slides ago. is just 3. And then to get from the shorter side to the hypotenuse, shorter leg to the hypotenuse, we multiply by 2. So we get 2 times the square root of 3. Rate your understanding on a scale of 0 through 5. If you were able to do this success criteria 100% by yourself, then you should be good to go. And then your homework is page, I don't remember, in your packet. It should be the last 2 pages in your packet, 13 and 14, I believe. Okay, pages 13 and 14 in your packet.